This project of ours, I will say, has been going on for a couple of years now, and it really started when I was newly married. And my friend and I, Tessa Mensch, who runs the project with me, she is part and parcel of everything that you see go on. We were both really interested in trying to learn more about what it means to live out a Lutheran identity in our households, in our environments, in our lives that don't just happen on Sunday morning, right? Or the times that we're in the church. And part of our investment in this, of course, was knowing that we would be raising families soon. We both had little kids when we started this. And so it was very much like at the very beginning of motherhood for us, and kind of our new identity as wives and moms, and of course, having husbands that were going to be pastors one day. But we found a lot of information online. You would look up how to celebrate Pentecost, in the home, or what can I do besides just going to church that actually tries to mark this as like a significant component of my day, my year, the habits that I have established. And you would find so many resources from the Catholic world, the Orthodox world, perhaps the Anglicans, if you're really lucky, for major days like this or whatever. And it was all really useful information, but of course it wasn't created from a Lutheran theological viewpoint. It wasn't kind of created with that understanding in mind. And so all of a sudden we started to think, why aren't we part of this conversation? Why aren't Lutherans represented in this world? I mean, we've been around for a long time. Like, we're certainly important to these sorts of dialogues, but there just wasn't a lot out there. And so kind of with further interrogation and looking at resources and stuff like that, we realized that a lot of these things really were part of the identity of just the church, right? Just the church as a whole. And we're certainly part of things from a Lutheran identity or viewpoint too, but had been forgotten over time, or just hadn't been passed down over the years or given any real meaning, if they were taught in certain times and places and stuff like that. And so our goal was really just try to resurrect some of those customs, understandings of things, being able to produce content that kind of looked at Lutheran liturgical living, and being able to promote it, like you said, for the use in households, obviously with children, which was kind of our personal buy-in. But since, has had such a great connection to many people in the church, whether it's schools that are looking to implement this as part of their curriculum, churches that are hoping to have this be like supplemental education to, again, what's just happening during the primary services of the week and things like that. And so everything that we do, everything that we talk about on our blog, but also the other venues that we have been a part of now, has just been trying to encourage kind of the flourishing of this Lutheran liturgical life and encouraging people to be able to live out parts of the church year in other aspects of their vocations and identities that aren't just them going to church.
It seems important for two ways. And actually, let me just say something right off the bat, right? This is one of the areas where I think I'm going to be, and I've looked into your stuff, so that process has already begun, but where I'm going to be converted or convinced of something. We do not do this in our household. I mean, in small ways we might do it, but nothing to the degree of what you're going to be putting forward here. So I'm very intrigued to learn more, because these are some changes that we want to make. And my wife and I were talking about this last night of like, she's like, don't come home with a whole system right off the bat. I'm like, no, I understand. And like, so we'll talk through and figure out how it works out in the Stecker household. But as I was thinking about it, right, so you're saying kind of two things. One, there's something that takes place on Sunday. And how does that not just happen on Sunday? How does that become part of your life? How does that become kind of a capstone of something that is part of your regular habits, right? Because if it's just Sunday, then you're really training your life to operate in a way that's separate from Sunday if you don't carry Sunday home, right? So that seems to be like one component. And then two, I'm very interested in like the seasonal aspect, right? Because especially with kids now, I think Christmas was really important. For us, the Christmas season always seems to be before Christmas because you get the trees up and everything like that, right? But as a kid, like that was always a magical time. Then I got into like my 20s, and like I wanted it to be, but like just naturally, like you're just living with guys in Indianapolis, and like we're not doing traditions, there. Then we get kids and we get a household, and we're like, oh yeah, like this is a really kind of, you want to bring that into your household so that kids can experience like the difference. There's something different going on in the year here, and it seems like having those seasons is very beneficial for kids and for parents, but just like that's a very lively way to live rather than every single day looking the exact same. Are those fair points?
Yeah, for sure. I think with the second one there, I mean, the whole point of it really is for education, right? It's all just a tool that's supposed to be utilized to help teach and learn more about life in Christ. I mean, it all points towards God. And that's kind of the first important like Lutheran identity aspect of it to keep in mind, is that it's always directed towards the cross. Like everything that we do is supposed to be in the service of seeing Jesus and God as the center of our year, the center of our time, the center of how we spend, every waking aspect of our life, not just on church on Sundays, as mentioned. But with kids, that the way that we implement that is a cyclical nature and kind of creating that patterns is so important for them, because they don't have a concept of time. Have you ever like asked a 2-year-old, what yesterday means or the word tomorrow or something like that? They have no idea. But if you start to create kind of this understanding of this is what life as a Christian looks like, we do certain things at certain times of the year. The colors that the church is vested in on Sunday actually mean something more than just, the altar guild, getting out different paraments to put up and stuff like that. It all works together. It's all been something that the church has created in a very useful way over so many years for the purpose of this educational reason. And again, it's not just something to be dismissed, right? Like the work and effort and thought that's put into the creation of those things shouldn't just be forgotten or kind of tossed to the side. There is an objective importance to it.
So you're saying like these are teaching tools, and especially I'm thinking for kids, like we had St. Michael the Archangel. Sunday was last Sunday, I think. Yeah, last Sunday, right? So we were in white, right? But people recognize that, right? So they go, okay, something's different, white, why? And then if you can kind of articulate that, then they can connect that importance to, whereas if I just gave like an introduction of like, here's St. Michael, and I just kind of give an explanation that just engages the mind, then that might be forgotten. But if you attach it to something visual and, some of these other aspects, liturgical aspects, then it becomes a little bit more rooted. You understand like, okay, there was something different going on here. This is why, this is how it contributes to the story of salvation in the biblical narrative.
Exactly. And it's supposed to involve the whole body and mind, right? All of these customs, traditions, the things that the church has propped up. It's not just about thinking through something intellectually. It's about learning it and having it ingrained in your heart and your soul in the way that really makes that faith formative for someone. And especially for a little kid, like that's how faith is formed, right? Is in those experiences. And, St. Michael is such a wonderful example, especially because that's such a great feast. And it landed on a Sunday this year, which we're so fortunate that we all got to experience that kind of together in a collective corporate fellowship. But thinking about the other tie-ins that day has to the Christian message, right? Like themes of the end time, since we're kind of like starting to progress towards the end of the church year now, and matters of life and death, and the things that we learn about angels and celestial beings, and kind of, the way that our earthly existence, is tied into so much more within the Christian narrative and things like that too. And so it's a wonderful day to be able to teach about those things, but then also make it really tangible for children, because, when you pull out the colors for church on Sunday, in our family, we made a blackberry cobbler, which is a tradition associated with St. Michael, and has a great story tie-in. You have an opportunity to then explain the story and teach about it, and your kids maybe remember that a little bit better than someone just saying, St. Michael's Day, or not even knowing who St. Michael is, which in some areas is certainly the case, if you haven't been familiar or grown up in a place that really cares about the church year.